Is it real love you're feeling or just a familiar wound that you're replaying? I mean, it's so easy to feel that chaos equals chemistry, you know?
Yeah, let's talk about trauma bonding.
Mm-hmm.
It can often be disguised as passion, intensity, or a fateful connection. When you have a new connection with somebody and you have something in common that you're bonding over that is an unresolved pain, wound, or something from your past that you yourself haven't yet healed. When you recognize that in somebody else, it can feel like a connection that feels meant to be, because you're like, oh, they have the same pain as me. Oh, they accept me. They understand me. Like, it's so easy to believe that when you first connect with somebody on something traumatic, it can lead to a healthy relationship, when actually trauma bonding is perpetuating the unhealed wound and perpetuating the repetition of that trauma, recreating itself in that relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And true love, honestly, feels connected. It feels nourishing. It feels safe. And it's weird because like the moment that we actually have access to those things after being with so much like chaotic, trauma bonding, it could feel really dull or boring or weird.
Because
or
it's
like
stable.
Yeah, because it's like, it's actually a balanced equilibrium versus chaotic in passion. And so, we're going to go into really healing the root of this through just simple discussion, honestly. Going into aspects of unworthiness and going into childhood wounding, like that's its own other path of exploration. There's a lot there. But if we hit the cliff notes on specifically what trauma bonding is and then examples of trauma bonding and how that can look in your life perhaps, and then also the green flags in a healthy relationship example. So we're just gonna like boom, boom, boom. And please, we really ask you guys to go deeper on each one of these in your own way. Perhaps there may be videos on each specific one. Who knows? But we're here to be of service. But this is a great way just to get right into it and feel the resonance, and also what may have happened to you in the past, or reflect and be able to heal from the past experience from clarification and good clarity. So okay, so example one of trauma bonding: extreme highs and lows, being addicted to the roller coaster ride. I've been through it. It's like, it's disguised as passion. Sure, there is passion mixed with it, but it's passion mixed with like toxic energy. So it's a tornado of like insanity, because the worst of you is coming out in both of you. And so it could be a really rough ride. And so the feeling of, it has to be like a passionate movie. So there has to be ups and down, ups and down, ups and downs, is really, really rough and could really make you feel unbalanced. Whereas actual healthy version is, the green flag of it is this feeling of calmness, consistency, can often feel, as we mentioned, boring and dull and gray, and like, is this even worth it? And it's like, you can feel the difference between something that's just simply not nourishing and is boring, or it's nourishing, but you're feeling repelled because you want to whip yourself back into the unhealthy patterns because you're so addicted to it. It's an actual addiction. It's a codependent addiction to the painful patterns of your childhood, trying to play themselves out again to wake you up.
Yeah, and it's a topic of the nervous system, really. When we're talking about trauma bonding, it's all about how your nervous system is accustomed to operating. Because if you are so accustomed to this like up and down, extreme highs and lows, there's a term that's love bombing, and that happens a lot because it's like, when you're really good, things are really good, and you're feeling like, oh, this person is my everything, like they're just like making me feel so good. And then when it's really bad, it's really bad, but then you really want to get back to that high feeling. And so your nervous system is like just on this up and down pattern, and it can feel like you're just stuck in it.
It's like when it's feeling low, it's like you want the hit again.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like that drug tendency.
Yeah.
Whereas in a healthy relationship, where you're giving from a full cup, you don't need each other in that way to get a hit off of getting all those releases of chemicals in your body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're chasing
for temporary
those dopamine hits when things are good, and you can actually get addicted to making up after fights.
That's true. Yeah, we talk about that too.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the next one for you.
Oh, justifications. Yeah. A red flag is justifying the other person's behavior by making yourself feel like what they're doing is okay, and like letting yourself believe that repeating these patterns of trauma are acceptable for whatever reason, because
gaslighting yourself.
You're like lying to yourself, believing that you're actually getting better, and that being with this person who also has the same wounds as you is helping, like you're helping each other to heal those wounds. But the majority of the time when both people have the same problem, it's really hard to help. Like if the person is not helping themselves with their problem, they're not going to be able to help the other person. So if both people have the same or similar wound and they're not healing it for themselves, or outsourcing support to actually like find therapeutic ways, or there's so much out there that you can access. But if people aren't resourceful in that way and they're not actually committed to their healing, it's just going to continue repeating. And so when you're in that pattern, you're always going to justify that it's okay, because every time it happens, you think, oh, it wasn't as bad as the last time, or things are getting better, when really it's just you're creating this justification for yourself and the other person.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Feeling addicted to the chaos. So we just mentioned that at the beginning, but yeah, it's like a drug, and when you're used to it as a child, and it just rinse repeats throughout time, you don't really know anything else actually. So it's really weird. To have a really tumultuous childhood, and then you go into a home of a family friend, or a friend in general that actually has a calm, beautiful atmosphere. It's like triggering. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Like you want to leave because it's like so weird. And so it's really important, if you can, to try to spot those patterns. And there's attachment styles to that, like anxious avoidant or anxious attached, or whichever, where you can see those like playing of your childhood mirrored back out into another person in order for you to either stop it, acknowledge it, stop it, and change it up. Otherwise, it's going to keep ruining your life. So you have a choice. You're always a being of choice.
What's the next one? Fear of leaving even when you're happy. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I've heard many instances of this scenario where people are, this kind of goes back to the video we talked about last week where we said settling can feel really comfortable. Yeah. When you feel so comfortable in the patterns, even if they're unhealthy, it can feel more scary to leave and break the pattern than to keep things the way they are, just because it's what you know. We fear the unknown more than we fear the familiar.
Or fear our light more than even our darkness.
Exactly. We fear our light. And so the idea of breaking free, even though it's deep down, it's what we want and it's what our soul is asking us for, our protective mechanism, which is the ego, and our own physical, neurological, nervous system patterning can convince us that it's more scary to break the cycles of abuse, both within yourself and with the other person. And when you believe that, then those cycles continue. And that's where it's really hard to leave a relationship when you're believing that that you're not able to leave,
Yeah.
even though it's you, like you said, we're beings of choice, and it is always your choice whether you choose to be with someone or not. But it's easy to forget that.
Yeah. Well, it triggers abandonment wounds and feeling of unworthiness, and all these things get like, and that's why we get flooded with all of these chemicals in our body all the time, and we get hardwired to believe that that's normal. And maybe it's normal for you, but it's teaching your body that you always are needing to be in fight or flight. And you're never really getting better. Like, you're not really improving your health or your well-being or your anxiety or your depression, because you're always hooking back into that experience. And so that's why it's so hard to break it, because your body is literally neurologically like hardwired in. That's why such deep respect to anybody who even attempts to break out of it. And of course, like, you know, like statistically, you're going to round back quite a few times until eventually it gets to a really hard spot where it's like, okay, I'm either going to like die or I got to go, like, because the body is taking so many hits, you know, on so many levels. You confuse intensity for intimacy. Yeah, I've been there. Totally been there. It's a scary spot, you know, and of course that could be exercise sexually as well. And so that there could be a lot of turn-ons on that. It can really transform sexuality into like, from this place of light and empowerment and connection into a place of darkness, where you're basically interplaying with your darker energy. There is a way to play with the darker energy in a way that's compassionate sexually that can cause liberation. That's a tantric experience. But when you don't know those things, you're basically feeding off of each other's devils in the bedroom, which is like quite intense. And there's power plays and dynamics to that. There's ways to try to play control over that. There's, you know, dominance, submission, all those different things like that. And I have no judgment for anyone who is diving and exploring that. I think it's actually important to explore our sexuality and explore different aspects of sexual expression. But it's like, where is your intention with your sexual play?
It's all about intention.
It goes right to always, you know? But especially when it comes down to this, like, if you're clearly in a painful relationship that's not allowing you to grow, what's going on in the bedroom, and like really understand that, because it's always going to be really hyper, like heightened in those places of like raw openness and intimacy. It's like your greatest opportunity to break that pattern is in those places sometimes. But when you're so used to getting off on that, it's really dangerous. Okay.
Overgiving to win back their attention. Yeah, when you are feeling like you've lost them, or you've lost the opportunity to be in that roller coaster again, even though it's not really what you want, but it's like you're addicted to it, so you're like, oh no, like I'm gonna be like left alone, or whatever like the fear is around it. There's this tendency to overgive. So there's like this,
or win back.
So it's like when you feel the other person pulling away, then it can be, it's a really important thing to notice when, I always say this, when your cup isn't full and you're trying to give to the other person without having met your own needs. That's a huge red flag, because the moment that you are overgiving from a place of not feeling full, then it's the other person, first of all, they can feel that, and they are most likely going to feel that it's not genuine, that you're not actually giving from your heart. And it's damaging to yourself, because you're not going to feel fulfilled, and most times they're going to pull away even more. Especially if they're anxious, avoidant, because then the more like needy, overgiving can come off as needy energy. Because you
repel the avoidant.
Like, because you're constantly feeling like, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough. What else can I do? How can I help?
Don't abandon me.
Don't abandon me.
Don't leave me.
Even though you tell yourself that you're coming from a place of love, you're actually just coming from a place of fear of losing them. And so if they're anxious avoidant, they're gonna pull away even more.
Yeah.
It's a very
push-pull dynamic is tough.
Push-pull dynamic.
Yeah. It's a lot of tension. Identity loss. Yeah. Who am I now? After this relationship, after all that pain and confusion, where am I with myself?
When you get wrapped up in the other person.
You're in the storm, you know, and it takes two to tango. So you're involved. There's feelings of shame, grief, lots of loss. And on the other side, you know, there's their own too. And there's lots of anger. There's lots of projection. There's lots of stories going on in the mind about who this person is, who you are, to a point where you don't even know where you are. They begin. It just becomes this like cluster.
Yeah.
And so leaving that can feel very lonely. I've personally experienced it where it's like, who am I now? And I'm really grateful that I had art and I had ways of channeling that. But a lot of people don't feel like they have a ready, accessible creative outlet, which I encourage anyone to dive into art therapy or music, or at least listen to music and dive into the albums and allow it to journey within you so that you can find that feeling of grief or pain and really get to know it, befriend it, honor it, and work through your own forgiveness within yourself to the best of your ability. That looks different for everyone. But from there, from that self-compassion, you can finally lead yourself further into this place of liberation from the experience. You can see it from a macro lens versus so tight-knit in the micro where you don't even feel like you can get out of it. And you feel like you're wrapped up like a snake in the experience and you don't feel like you could breathe even. And you can tell I'm speaking from personal experience. And it's rough.
Especially when your lives are so intertwined and you have like
so much,
the same
everything.
patterns. You're living together. You're
all wrapped up.
If you're in a state of codependency, it can feel like you can't actually detach, or you can't like have your own experience.
Or you feel like you're not allowed to.
Or even like if you are in the same room and you feel like you can't just like be in silence together. Like I've heard that from people saying like they don't feel comfortable enough to just like share space with their partner without actually like engaging. I think that's a huge red flag. It's like if you can't just like be your calm, like unengaged self, that's obviously codependence because
it's not unconditional.
You shouldn't need to always be exchanging information or like
to feel safe.
Energy. Like you don't always have to give attention to the other person in order for them to feel loved. And if they feel like they need your attention constantly, or vice versa, then that's not sustainable.
Right.
Because there's going to be times where you're just going to be in the room and you're not going to be like doing anything, and that needs to be okay.
Yes, and you know, it's easier said than done too. You know, when you grow up and you're so used to trying to get attention from your parents and they're just like to completely dismissing you, and then you're left in this like, you know, it's really tough, and you have these like inward shame spirals about like who you are and like needing to like gain energy and attention so that you can feel okay versus you just making sure that you are okay no matter what. Which breath work, meditation, yoga, walks in nature, art, music, all those things, those beautiful things help us be able to know that we are okay in ourselves, no matter what's going on around us, and that we don't need all these things in order to feel cool with ourselves and with reality. And that could take time. You know, that's quite a process.
What's this one? Moments of relief are mistaken for love. When you have these moments of, there's no drama. Everything's okay. Like, we're not in a fight. When you're in a relationship where you're constantly bickering or everything is a fight, no matter how like minuscule, like you just are always in a state of like banter or like conflict. Whenever there's moments of pause between that, it can feel like this sense of relief. You're like, we're not fighting. This is great. And then you mistake those moments as like, everything's okay now. Like we're falling in love again, you know? And it's actually like, those are the moments when it's a perfect opportunity to just walk away. 'Cause you're like, This is an opportunity for me to like regain my own energy, my own space, reflect. Clarity. And when I say walk away, I don't mean like break up and leave necessarily.
Space.
Disclaimer. I just mean like if it's you have a moment of calm and you're not engaging in a conflict or a conflict resolution.
Take advantage of that.
Then use that as an opportunity to connect with yourself and just be like, okay, how am I actually feeling about this person and how do I feel around them? And when you step away from them, when you spend time with yourself, do you feel different?
You know, this is interesting because even when in perhaps a circumstance, someone is like, feels that sense of like calm, which is accelerated into feeling like, wow, this relationship's really great, but it's really not. It's just like, you're just hitting baseline.
You're just,
It's literal healthy relationship baseline where there's basically no energy.
You're just like a homeostasis. Like, okay, everything.
And you're blissed out because you're so like, you're so lacked of those nutrients of just like equilibrium. It could feel really rough and really painful.
Yeah, it's so important to reassess and reevaluate how you're actually feeling when you're not with them. Because if when you step away, you feel better and you feel more calm.
It says so much.
That's your nervous system talking to you. That's your nervous system
telling
saying,
you something.
Hey, this person is not helping your healing journey. They're not actually assisting you in your growth, and they're not contributing to your well-being.
Right.
If you are constantly in a state of conflict around them within yourself, chances are they're also in a state of conflict within themselves.
Yes.
And so to take time apart for both parties to assess how they feel when they're not in those interactions, then come back together and decide.
Well, it could barely happen because often one is usually primary, but maybe both are feeling threatened by that opportunity to actually get clarity.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a threat. And so there's like this shaming or this manipulating or gaslighting on the other person even wanting or stating, hopefully just like a good boundary of like, I actually just wish to have some space. And that's usually like, oh, you're leaving me, or like, oh, you're not standing up for a relationship. And it can be like this really weird like tactic, which, you know, the other person is just simply acting out their wounding. But it's still not honoring the fact that clarity, regardless of anything in our relationship, if there's clarity that comes up, thank God, because it helps us both. We should only hope for our partner to go out and need space and gain clarity for the both of us so that we can accelerate and become better people together.
Exactly.
That's like ideally a goal. But if that's flipped upside down, then that's a serious red flag.
Yeah, that's like reverse psychology.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing to note, that when you bring forward the boundary of this is the space that I need, whether that's like time or physical space, or you need to just take a break, like whatever that is, whatever that looks like for you, to note how the person responds. Because if the person is celebrating you, they're like, oh, okay, like maybe this doesn't feel great, but like I'm curious, you know, why you're needing space, and like I respect you, and like let's talk about what that looks like, and let's, you know, come to an agreement for how space can be a good thing, right? But if the person immediately goes into like an argument or trying to change your mind, like, you don't need space, honey, like it's fine, like
you
let's
got
just
me.
Or they'll like try and distract you. Oh, you're just stressed, or like saying things like that.
Or blaming some other exterior things.
Like projecting.
Which is gaslighting the actual experience that the person is saying or feeling, that they're trying to learn what is happening with and verbalize that outwardly. Like that takes a lot of courage, that takes a lot of like trying to figure out, and others can definitely try to squash it because it feels threatening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's subtle, but it's important to know how they're responding is going to say a lot about their behavior moving forward. Their initial response is going to tell you where they stand with you honoring your own boundaries and whether they're going to be willing to honor your boundaries moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah, so we actually kind of talked about this throughout the entire experience, but walking on eggshells, this feeling of just like your whole nervous system is in fight or flight the whole time. That should tell you ideally everything, but when that becomes your normalcy, especially throughout growing up, and you just don't know anything better.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
To feel like your partner's always gonna get mad at you for something.
Well, that's the thing. Ironically, it's like you're so tired, you're so fatigued from just walking on eggshells that to even gain the energy and the momentum to stand up for yourself and speak your truth, only to know that you're going to get squashed down no matter what you bring up, is like an incredibly damaging, scary thing. And it can feel super isolating. And sure, friends could tell you till the cows come home all this truth.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and they probably are.
And at least if they're good friends, they're going to tell you what's up.
Probably have told you.
But they're probably going to keep their distance too, because they don't want to get wrapped up in it per se. But like, you can know these things cognitively, but the body is so horrified by change because it thinks it's going to die. Like the feeling of change feels like death. But the thing is, it is a death.
It is a death.
It's a death into rebirth.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you're not willing to try to go through that, you're not going to do it.
Well, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah. It just keeps going.
Actually so ironic because the only constant is change.
Yeah.
But if nothing changes in the patterns that you're creating in your life, then those patterns will incrementally get worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they won't change for the better.
Yeah. We often say like, it's like God or creator or whatever you want to call it, the universe is knocking on the door. Like, hey, there's a lesson, there's a pattern for you. And then you don't listen, it gets worse. Pounding on the door until eventually it kicks down the door. And that's an act of love. Yeah. Being like, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up.
You don't want to wait till the moment you get hit by the 2x4.
Well, and this goes right back to, of course, like domestic abuse and all these layers to it, where like the relationship becomes sheltered off by usually one of the individuals of making sure the outside world doesn't have access to that person. And so you manipulate that situation, and then all of a sudden you control it within it, and then that person just becomes abused to the fullest, until eventually, ideally, there is intervention. There is a way that, this is why it's so important for there to be healthy, strong, masculine men on this planet who are willing to do what it takes to protect their mother, to protect their sister, their ex-wife even, like just whoever, it's like honor the women in this situation who simply don't have the physicality to be able to fight back. And if they even tried, who knows, right? So it's like, it's a scary situation. Also, men do get physically abused too. So I wish to acknowledge that. It's a scary experience. There's often not enough help and support for men who are going through those scenarios. And often the police come to the door and they just kind of, they can often chuckle and not support. And so it's really psychologically damaging because men are trying to be this like, but if they're actually getting physically abused because of layerings of psychological issues and all these things that are going on with their trauma, it can really spiral. So just really recognizing, there's so many layers to the human experience and with this level of pain, but there are resources, there are counseling, there are like hotlines. I'm actually going to put in the description different resources that people can reach out to. I'm speaking for Canada, so I'll put those in there, but it's easy to look up online and find some resources if you can. This is a reminder to check on your friends. Check on your friends. Who knows? It could be perceived that they're all right, but there's actually so much more. And they may need a moment to be taken out of the relationship dynamic physically so they can get some clarity, go for a walk with them, do some sports with them, do something where you're just sitting down and expressing and hearing from their heart. While of course honoring your own boundaries from how much you could do. It's really important to have allies.
Because often the first part to like an abusive situation is that isolation piece. It's like where the abuser will start to end relationships, and this can happen very incrementally over time, where they'll just start to find reasons for why that friendship is not good, or you shouldn't hang out with that person, or they'll make up all these stories about why this person's not good for you, or like or even just like so controlling to the point where they're saying like, no, I actually won't allow you to hang out with that person. Like, I've had previous partners who like would say stuff like that. They'd be like,
same.
oh, I don't like so-and-so. Like, I don't want you to spend time with them. And that's like, and I immediately was just like, you don't get to tell me who I get to choose to have in my life. Like,
I'm proud of you because you actually said that. That's awesome.
Like, I've heard of so many stories where people just don't think that that's weird. Like, they're like, they'll just say, oh yeah, you're right. Maybe that person isn't good for me. When really that's like a super solid friend who actually genuinely cares about you. And but this can happen incrementally, where then eventually you don't even realize that you've cut yourself off, or you've allowed the other person to cut off all these ties.
You don't even see it.
With like actual solid support systems. And that's really scary, because then once you burn those bridges, especially if they are people who have tried to warn you, or they've tried to do the same with your partner in the like reverse, where they say, oh, I don't think this partner is good for you. And then
they're trying to control your life.
Yeah, exactly. And then
who are they to say about a relationship?
They potentially burn the bridge, because they're like, oh, well, you don't get to tell me who I'm going to date. And so then they go ahead and date the person, and that's just a slippery slope. So it's so important to have that discernment and to actually ask yourself, who are the people that are showing up in your life?
You look at that.
Like we're really doing that this year, because we're getting married this year. And so it's so tricky to narrow down like who actually gets to be invited, because we've built so many connections over the years, but the question that I'm asking myself is, who's actually shown up for me like in the last year?
It's a great opportunity.
Like who are those friends who reach out and like catch up and actually remind you that they're there? It doesn't have to be all the time. Like, I understand that life is busy. We're all busy. We have a lot going on. And if you don't live in close proximity, it's really hard to stay up to date sometimes with friends. But at least like reaching out to just like let them know that you're still there for them.
It doesn't have to be this negative thing like, oh, I hope you're okay. You know, it's more like, hey, like I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. I'm feeling you.
Even just a simple text like, hey, I miss you. How are you? Would love to catch up.
So big.
If you're too busy, all good. Just know that I'm here if you ever want to connect. Simple as that. And it's so like big. The people that have shown up for us in the last year, the people who have like come out of the woodworks when we needed support, like when we needed favors, when we were in moments of stress and moments of chaos, and like when we just needed like some advice or a second opinion. Those people are the ones who get invited. Like those people are the ones that we're
get invited to our life.
Exactly. Those are the people that we want to have around, because they have proven that they're not just going to show up for the good times. They're not just going to be around when it's all party, har. It's like we want people who are there for the hard times, you know? The people who are there for the highs and the lows, and they are unconditionally friends. That's what really matters in the end.
Exactly. God bless them.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for enjoying this beautiful flow. And you know, we're here to talk about the hard stuff, because you don't know whose life you're going to shift, you know? And we're speaking from personal experience. Are we perfect? No. But we have navigated some crazy lows and some crazy highs. And we've reached a beautiful level of balance with each other, where we're able to bring ourselves right back into center very quickly. And, you know, it depends on the day, but it's a beautiful thing. And so, thank you for walking us through this beautiful opportunity to discuss trauma bonding and also love, because love is nourishing, it is soothing, it is real, it is safe, it is a calm nervous system. That's what you deserve, okay? It's wild to think about too, because our environment, especially in the Western world, is built for us to feel like we always need something and that we're not enough, and all these other things, like especially in the propaganda of selling things and advertising, and we're just hardwired that way in this world. But it's a great test. It's a great opportunity to see where we're at with ourselves all the time, as is any relationship. But you deserve to be able to note the red flags early enough to be like, whoa, and then state it and move forward into a better life of nothing but green, okay? I'm talking about green hearts, green money, beautiful life of green valleys. I don't care. Like just green, okay? Green flag central, okay? You deserve that. So thank you for dropping in, and please subscribe, please like, please share. It's been really lovely to see our audience growing at our beginning stages. And we love also to hear your feedback. Please comment anything that really like activated you, or any feedback, any critique. Anything. We really love to hear from you and to feel you guys. And yeah, we're here for you. Okay. Lots of love. Thanks for joining us.
Big love.